Hello and welcome to Obsessive Audio. Hope you're all having a fantastic week. We've got a fantastic episode here today for fantastic new product that just came out, and it is another Acustica product. They've been releasing stuff like mad, and I am here for it. This one is called Desert. It's a vintage suite. It's based on 1960s Germanium gear. If you take a look in the manual, they give you all the clues you need to figure out what this is. Early 1960s studio manufacturer, also a record label. They also had a studio in Nigeria. If you do the math on all of that, you come up with Decca Records. And Decca did make some of their own gear for their studios, the mixing, the mastering, great stuff. The final clue also to be found in the manual is they tell you which studio sampled this gear. And if you go there, you can see pictures of the lovely 8-channel console that was used as the main backbone of this plugin. Now there's also a compressor and a limiter and also preamps. 8 of the different preamps from the different channels, which have an additional drive function, so you can really get a lot of harmonics and distortion out of this plugin, which is great. Now today I've got a whole mix going, and I've got Desert all over the thing, doing various duties, EQ, compression. There's even a compressor on the mix bus. Before we do that, let's take a quick look at the controls. I just want to go over it very quickly because we will do a little bit more explanation during the video. Now I should mention it's not just one plugin, it's a whole suite of plugins. The main plugin that we're looking at right here is the channel strip plugin. That's got everything on it. It's got your preamp section up here, it's got your EQ section right here, and it's got the compressor section down here. Now for the preamp section, you can choose between the 8 different input preamps and the 8 different output stages. So these are not volume controls. You're not going to get any extra level. You're switching between the different channels on the desk that they sampled that you just saw there. Same with the output stage. This is where you would be getting some additional drive, and this mainly has to do with the drive on the output stage. For the input stage, you would be looking at the usual input trim, and I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with Acustica products by now, but this is a gain compensated trim. It hits the internal operation of the plugin harder, so you get more harmonics and that stuff, but it does take the output volume down by the same amount, so you're just getting, a more saturated tone and not necessarily louder. That's really helpful in the mix. You keep your headroom and you can just sort of find the sweet spot that you're looking for. So that's the preamp section. There's an overlight in there that'll indicate if you're hitting it too hard, because if you do hit it too hard, you might start getting weird artifacts or behavior that you don't want. So I'd advise everyone to keep the red light in mind. Here's your input level meter and your output level meter. And then below that, we've got the EQ section. You got 2 EQs to choose from, A and B. They're switched here. You can go off in the middle, A on the top, B on the bottom. And I'll choose between the 2 different models and the bypass. The top model, A, is based on the console. That's got low and high pass filters. Here's the high pass, 3255 up to, I can't read that if it's 300 or 380. And here's an interesting feature. It has notch filters. And if you look at the graphs in an analyzer, you'll see that it's a fairly narrow notch, but it's notches that go down into the bass frequencies. So you can notch down at like 30 hertz or 80. It can be useful to help clean up the low end, and it does have a bit of a different sound from the high pass filters. Now, here, I believe there's just the one fixed frequency. So you've basically got a bass control where you can boost or cut, and a treble control where you can boost or cut. Treble's at 20 kilohertz. The low end is at 50 cycles. And here, similarly, is the low pass filter. We can bring that low pass pretty low. Is that 0.65K or something? That's 650 hertz. That's cutting out a lot of top end, and it goes up to 5.25 kilohertz. And same deal here, you've got these notch filters. So again, if you need to cut out top end, this might be a different way to go. I have used that in the mix that we're going to see here. And over here, you've got the mid-side options here, or left-right. In the middle, it's left-right. This is standard stereo operation. These control both channels left and right equally when you adjust them. If you do mids, then the equalization is only applied to the center portion of your audio, and likewise with the sides, it will only be applied to the side portion of the audio. It doesn't split up, like you can't have two separate EQs for mid and side on this one. It's a little more basic than that. So you're choosing left, right, or only to equalize the mids, or only to equalize the sides. Down here's the compressor. So we went over the input trim and what that does. Basically, you're getting 3 compressor modes, one of which is a limiter. Compressor 1 is a faithful emulation of the original 60s compressor. Compressor 2 is a bit of a Frankenstein, where you have additional attack and release capabilities that go beyond what the original gear was. And then there's the limiter. The limiter, I believe, is also faithful to the original. So let's say if we went to compressor 1, you'll see here attack and release, straightforward. Acustica's SH mod, which if you know Acustica, you know what that is. It alters the shape of the attack, so you can tune that to different sources. If you want to, if the attack just isn't quite right, you can maybe find something, tune it in a little bit better with that. Wet and dry mix control for parallel compression. SOA, which is a safe operational area. This basically means it depends on how hot you're driving the plugin. You may want to have more compression, which you can get. You're going to get a more compressed tone by moving this up, or relaxing it will ease off of the compression. There is a warning light, I believe, somewhere on here that you don't want to go over in this area. You don't want to go too crazy with it. Just sort of fine tune it. If you feel like you've done everything you can with the threshold and all that, you might get some additional changes with this. Now, an interesting thing, this seems to have an output, but also a makeup. And I haven't read in the manual exactly what the difference is there, so I'm just going to leave it at that. I've been using the makeup, high pass filter for the side chain so that the bass frequencies don't get compressed. It'll give you a bit more subs in whatever you're compressing, and the lows won't make the compressor go crazy. And threshold control, of course, right? Did I say that already? I don't know. And this slider over here, I think this is the last thing, and that's just your master output for the plugin after all is said and done. Okay, so let's get to this mix, and I'm just going to play it for you and go over what the different channels are and where desert occurs in it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've got, the drums are just on 2 tracks. Drums, which is the pieces, so kicks, snare, and toms. It's on 1 track. There's an instance of desert. Cymbals would be hi-hats, cymbals, and room. Same thing, 1 instance of desert. Bass, 1 track, DI, I think. 1 instance of desert, and a bunch of other stuff. Acoustic, they go to a bus, but the desert is actually on the two separate acoustic tracks. Now these are DI. We did what we could to make them sound a little bit less DI, but it only goes so far. But they each have desert on them. Slide guitar. It's also a bus that has the guitar. The guitar's room. There's a nice kind of swelly quadriverb guitar. That's what that's doing. Rock guitars. Those are 3 Marshalls, each with a room mic. Third one doesn't come in until later though. Turn those up. that's it. That's just the vocals that we're not going to be hearing. So let's just start off with the kick drum and see what we've done. We'll play around with it so you can hear what the different tones are and that sort of thing. Okay, let's listen to those drum pieces, the kick, the snare, the toms. These are samples. The cymbals are real on this one. Now, I'm going to start with an on and then turn it off. Now I'm going to turn it off. Back on. Nothing too severe there. You could hear maybe a bit more energy, a bit more density, maybe a bit more level. You can see here we have the preamp cranked up pretty high. That's generating quite a bit of harmonics. Plugin's actually running kind of hot too. It's sounding pretty good too. We're using EQA, which is the console EQ. No high pass filter or notching at all. There is some bass added at 50 cycles and quite a bit. Was it about 3 o'clock there? And treble is not being added. So just a bass boost and some harmonics. The compressor is also off. Let's listen to that in the course of the mix. Off. On. Let's juice up the bass a little bit. Take it down. Bit more harmonics even. Off. On. Just helps them drive forward a bit, gives it a bit more body to that kick drum. It's pretty simple, really. Let's go on to the cymbals. I want you to hear this high shelf, so we're going to solo that out there. Another one of the channels, channel 4 input, channel 4 output shows in here. Quite a bit of harmonics. Let's turn those down. Subtle. Let's run the plugin hotter. Also using EQA. Got just the slightest amount of treble boost. But it can... That's cranked up. Let's take it off. Really such a nice frequency. And there is some compression going on here. Although I don't see the meter moving very much. What happens if I turn the compressor off? I'm not sure if that's really doing all that much. Could compress it more. Speed up that release. Went back to the beginning of the song. Slower release. You know, with drums, very careful. If the release gets too slow, you're just basically just turning them down. Although this compressor has a really cool movement to it, as we're going to hear in the guitars. Attack. What does it sound like with the compressor off? Let's make up that gain actually before we do that. You're on. Off. So it is adding a bit of life to it. Let's just go with that. Let's leave that. Let's move on to the bass. So here, no preamp actually. Doesn't look like any EQ either. This is all about the compressor. All right, let's turn that compressor off in here. Back on. Let's solo up the bass. Yeah, I see. You can see it reacting quite a bit. There's a little bit of a pop there actually too. So that might have been something I adjusted, or maybe something I didn't notice. Let's not hit the plug-in quite so hard. So yeah, there is some saturation going on here. On. Off. On. Listen to the subharmonics. Off. On. Off. On. It's just a nice beefy sound. And I didn't even have the sidechain high pass. Let's put that in. I think that'll probably make a pretty big difference in the amount of rumble. Let's go back earlier on in the track. On. Off. Just puts it forward a little bit, but also it sort of holds it into a place. Acoustics. Last thing had a lot done to it. Let me turn it down a bit. I'm going to bypass everything. You can hear the original. Pretty DI-like. Sounds good. Not bad by itself. You maybe want to EQ some of that quackiness out of the DI. In the mix, I mean, this song probably, the acoustics should be pretty forward with this song and probably if this was going to be released, I might want to actually redo them with more than just the DI. Maybe, even tune it up a little better. But for the purposes of this, show you what I did to try and get it sounding a little bit more acoustic-like. Let's turn all these off, and then we'll just start adding them one by one. First thing was just some gain. It just takes it down by 6 dBs, which just helps to hit the plugins a little better. The pitch was because there's a note that's a bit too sharp in there. It's just a few cents. 5 cents. Note's too flat, I guess. It's 5 cents up. It's enough to pull that note into that pitch window a little bit, but not put the other ones too out of it. It just sounded a little better that way. Without well, you'd have to hear it in the whole track. Now this is an impulse response. It's an impulse response of an acoustic guitar that I've mixed in. Let's just go with just the impulse. It sounds pretty good by itself too, compared to the dry. Just a little bit more woodiness to the tone. I mean, you probably never really get this to sound like a mic'd up acoustic. It's probably always going to have a bit of that DI characteristic, but we do what we can. It's demo, right? Let's listen to them both together. This also has similar treatment. Let's put Desert back on. You hear how that scooped it right out? And this is intentional, because what it's doing is making use of that notch filter, and it's notching right around 240. Like, it's a big difference. Here's one of them. I'll put it back in. Gets rid of all of that, kind of frequency, which, by itself would be probably okay in the mix. Maybe not so much, just clouds it up a bit. But let's hear what Desert's doing. Let's go to this one. Just hear it by itself, hear what it's doing. So we have some harmonics here from the preamps. I went with the input preamp number 5 and output number 4. I don't know why I like output number 4, but hear how that actually brings the volume down. I've noticed that about this plugin. Maybe because it's hitting the compressor harder. That's exactly what's happening, actually. So this is the preamp, so it goes before the compressor. So if you're driving it harder, you're going to get more volume into this comp. So that's something to keep in mind. In this case, we're using the limiter mode, where the fast attack and fast release have the effect of just crisping it up a bit, brightening it up with a fast attack and fast release. Whereas if you wanted to make it, say, more buttery, you could do that by picking something really slow. It's pretty slow. Go with a long attack and pretty long a release. And let's dig into it a bit. And maybe let some of the low end through in the filter, sidechain filter. Let's dig in more. As in case you did want to recover a little bit of the richness that was, because it skipped them up pretty good with that notch there. But so this could be another way to go. It sounds good by itself, in the mix, maybe not so much, maybe it doesn't cut. Let's go back to what we had, actually. Got it right here. And it's really slamming that limiter. By itself, maybe you don't want this kind of sound. The mix, though, holds it up front pretty good, you know? I mean, it's a DI anyway, right? If you keep doing this, you end up with Def Leppard Hysteria. So let's take a peek at what we did with the slide guitar. There's a solo that happens. Let's hear with it on and off, and you'll see what we were getting at. I believe we used the compressor here. And we didn't even use preamps. This is just to use the compressor, I think, this instance here. You can see it's hitting it really hard again. It's compressor 2 this time. Let's play that same passage, but without the compressor. That's actually pretty nice without it. Well, let's put it back on though, because what I was trying to achieve with this was to get that pop at the beginning when it comes in, when the compressor, when the attack doesn't quite come in, you get that. And I wanted that to see if that could draw a little bit more attention to the guitar, and that's on for the whole track, not just the solo. Let's make that pop. Let's play that section again without it. So it's definitely got the pop. Let's play it again with it. I like it. I like what it did. Jury's still out which one you might want to use when it comes down to it. It's probably a good idea also, wouldn't you? You think you've got your mix happening, just bypass a few things to make sure you didn't get too far away from the, it didn't run away from you, right? Let's go for rock guitars. And here he goes, doing pretty meaty. But listen without it. Hear all that low end? On. So we have high pass at around 150 cycles. What would 300 sound like? Might be too thin, might not. For this song, maybe it is too thin. These are sort of supposed to just sit in the background, give the whole thing size when the choruses come in. So having them a bit warmer, more in the back, cool. No other EQ. I wonder, I didn't try the low pass. Let's hear what the low pass does. Gets rid of the sizzle. That might work pretty well. Let's turn it on. On. Yeah, let's go with that. I like that. But I think the name of the game here on the guitars is with the compression. You can see that it's just moving ever so slightly. Well, it is soloed up. I guess it's a bus, so it's all the guitars at once. And there's some leaking going on. There's like a hi-hat leaking in there. See that compressor just moving on those sustained chords. It's pretty slow, right? I'm gonna exaggerate it. I'm just going to turn the input gain up and the threshold down a little bit. So let's get this maximized as well. Let's dig in a bit. Really, you got to find a... Look, it'll compress really well until it starts compressing too much. So that's where you got to be careful. You can hear when it digs in and it releases. Hear that motion where it swells up? Listen to the chord. Moving around all over the place. It's great. It's one thing that Acustica compressors, in my opinion, could do really well is that complexity of the motion. Now that there's quite a bit more compression on there, I believe. There we go. And we'll make that up. Oh, that's too much compression. On. Off. On. Off. Go turn off just the compressor. On. I love it. It's speaking to me. It's moving around great, and in the track, it just sort of does that thing. So there's one more. So last plugin instance, I did go with one of the single plugins here, and this is the compressor plugin. This is on the master bus. It's on the whole mix. The needle's barely moving on this thing. Compressor is on. Dry. Off. On. Off. On. Try digging in a little more to it. Hear with that motion, how it's rocking back and forth. There's much more compression than you would ever use in mastering, but you can hear how smooth and how bouncy that at the same time. It's not getting a lot of rough edges out of this compressor, which is great. Let's ease that off again. We'll leave a little bit more than we had before. Bypass. Let's go back a bit. Off. On. Off. On. Even in this quieter section, you can still hear the density. Off. On. Off. On. Time for some cymbal automation, I hear. All right, well. Let's hear what Compressor 2 can do here.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Dig in, listen to the character of it. Pretty good. What is it? Faster release? It's a little pumpier. And of course up here really fast. That's just bouncing like crazy. You know, when you do this, you can get it to fit with the tempo of the song a little better. It's pretty nice. Let's slow it up a bit. Kind of like this one better. Let's ease up that threshold again so we're not killing it. All the way up. Let's start to clamp down on it and hear where it sounds nice. Too much. Like that. Without. With. Maybe a little bit more low end through. Out with there you have it. Desert from Acustica Audio. Pretty amazing. Go check it out now, acusticaudio.com. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, keep coming back. I'm trying to put out more of these. I hope you're enjoying them, and we will see you next time on Obsessive Audio.